Hello to all the people who have already joined us. I am Barbara, coordinator of the Internet of Production Alliance. While we wait for everyone else to join us, I invite you to rename yourself to indicate the organization you're representing, if there is one, and where you are. I also invite everyone to remove video so that we save everybody's bandwidth. There will be moments where we invite people who wish to share their video as well. Welcome, everyone. I think we're ready to start, and we will let people join in as the next minutes roll by. I'll do a little bit of introductions and welcome information until then. I'm going to turn on my video. So hello, I am Barbara Schack. I'm the coordinator of the Internet of Production Alliance. I am first and foremost really happy to welcome all of you today. A year ago, we were launching the Open Nowhere data standard officially after 1 year of development and tests. And I had actually just joined the Alliance at that point. That was my first public appearance. So it's quite meaningful for me that we are today celebrating 1 year since then. And we are very excited to be sharing some of the work that has been done and thinking with all of you about how that is applicable to a wide range of use cases. Before we look at the agenda and who the speakers are and introduce ourselves, a little bit of etiquette, as one might call it. You are welcome and invited to rename yourselves to indicate an organization you might represent, where you are calling us from, and any other information you might find useful. We will, as much as possible, try to all remain on mute and without video while the presentations are happening. And then once we go into breakout sessions and participative elements of the presentation, then we will all be able to share sound and video. This is to be mindful of the amount of bandwidth that we're using for everybody, and also so we can focus on who we're listening to. I will give you a little bit of background about who we are and what we're doing here for those who might not already know it. There are actually quite a lot of organizations present in this call and who are proud to show you their work. I represent the Internet of Production Alliance, which is a wide network of organizations and individuals who are looking at enabling an Internet of Production. Globalized, decentralized, local manufacturing is what we call an Internet of Production. Many of our organization members already do local manufacturing or have collaborative design platforms. What we all do together is try to create the Internet for that, agreeing on data protocols, how we exchange information, what is the infrastructure, digitally speaking, needed for all of these local production initiatives to be able to communicate and collaborate together, to be able to do that as a global scale. And a year ago, we launched a data standard for mapping where you can make something. And it's called the Open Nowhere, so that you can know where to make something. It is a data standard that enables standardization of where manufacturing is. Many people have mapped manufacturing locations. It is in a very large amount of Excel spreadsheets and government institutions and NGOs. It is on platforms like OpenStreetMap. It is on platforms like FabLab platform. And all of these sets of data cannot communicate together because they are all mapped in very different ways. So that was the initial need that led us to identifying that a standardization of such data was needed. In this call or webinar, we're going to be talking about how we go about actually mapping data using the standard, and we'll be giving the spotlight to one of the most exciting projects that happened over the last year, which is a brand new partnership that collected data in Mogadishu and Hargeisa, and we'll be hearing directly from the people from there. Once we've talked about that, we will think through how that is actually useful, what happens to this data, how can it be used, and we will close to talk about how you can get involved right here, right now, to be a part of the Open Nowhere community and to support local manufacturing. That is all the talking I would like to be doing right now. I will invite all of the speakers to turn their video on. Today we'll hear from my colleague Max, who's also letting everybody into the call, Nishant with the Response Innovation Lab, Anna Lowe, who is a part of the Internet of Production Alliance and with Manufacturing Change and is the chair of the Open Nowhere Working Group. We're very excited to be welcoming Mohamed Okash from the CIMAD iLab and Abdirashi Hussain from the Somaliland Chamber of Commerce, who will be telling us about what actually happened and what it's like to partner with us on this. And Kat Sellers from Field Ready, who both spearheaded the first implementations before the launch of Open Nowhere, and also will tell us about how you can actually put this data to use once it's been collected. So that was all for me. I would like to hand over the microphone to Nishant and invite us all to cut our video off now. Thank you.
Great, thank you everyone. And yeah, so my name is Nishant with the Response Innovation Lab, leading this initiative in Somalia and Somaliland. And so yeah, I would like to share a bit about how we decided to bring this to map out Hargeisa and Mogadishu. And we have a few of our partners from Oxfam and World Vision and the Somaliland Chamber of Commerce and CIMAD University who helped us in this initiative. So I will also give them a few minutes to share. But so as Barbara mentioned last year, they developed this standard globally, and they were running a large project through Field Ready in others, but in Kenya, Uganda, Iraq, and Bangladesh. And they had launched the standards almost exactly 1 year ago. And I was participating in the launch of the standards, and I saw an opportunity to try and map out other countries. Of course, we weren't part of that original project. And so, yeah, so I began a conversation with the Internet of Production Alliance team around how can we look at bringing in those standards to another country. One of the things that we saw in Somalia, Somaliland was during COVID, it highlighted some of the vulnerabilities in the global supply chain. I think many countries experience that also. Somalia is quite dependent on imports, and so a lot comes in. And so there was a bit of a backlog. There were some challenges around that. And so we began to see a need for being able to understand what is the opportunity for local production. And so it began a long process of seeing how can we do it. And as some of you may be aware, it's one thing to collect data. It's another thing to make sure that you have a system that has up-to-date information. And so for us, we didn't just want to bring in a bunch of, hire a bunch of people and just do a data collection one time. We wanted to look at right off the beginning, how can we not only collect this insight and this information, but also look to build a partnership with different institutions that would have like-minded values, see the value of something like this, and be able to then see where it can go and hopefully help us in the sustainability of maintaining that information. So in Hargeisa, we then looked to partner with Oxfam, who was quite interested in mapping and being able to understand what is available, and also to try and support youth programming in different industries like that, together with World Vision. And then, of course, the Somaliland Chamber of Commerce. The Somaliland Chamber of Commerce had already been quite active with being kind of an advocate for local industry, collecting their information. And so they already had a really good network. And of course, from your traditional humanitarian agencies, it's very different. The type of data collection that you do through household surveys and stuff is very different than trying to get information from, let's say, a factory. And so it was very critical to have the Somaliland Chamber of Commerce to tap into their network, their expertise, and also their reputation to give us access, to give us trust to be able to collect this information. And so we began to look at that. And then in Mogadishu, we looked to partner with the CIMAD iLab, and the CIMAD iLab is hosted under CIMAD University, which is a quite reputable university that does quite a bit of research. And they have been setting up their own makerspace. And so this is something that they were also quite interested in. And so for us, it also gave us a bit of a case study to see, what does it look like to partner with the university to help collect that information? What does it look like to partner with industry, like the Chamber of Commerce in Somaliland, and to try and tap into those networks, to learn from those experiences, and then to also hopefully not just get the data one time, but then to also have those relationships and network should we need to go back and update or refresh or expand the mapping. Let me go over to the next slide and give a couple minutes for Abdi Rashid. I think if you're here, maybe you can briefly share about your thoughts and experiences on Somaliland, and then also Ahmed from Oxfam, you can share a bit after.
Hello, Nishat. Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, for us, we were actually when we saw this initiative, we wanted to learn how many local manufacturers are existing in Hargeisa, what they are doing, what are the challenges. And basically, we wanted, for us, our interest lies that we want to support, build capacity of these manufacturers in terms of, providing business development support services, technical support, and also helping them to adopt, circular business models, which is environmentally and socially friendly. So these are our interests that we wanted to explore. So I think the findings of this, report and the lists of the manufacturers, explored would help us now design our concept, accordingly. So thank you very much, Nishat.
Great. Thank you. And maybe we'll come back if Abdi Rashid is able to join again, and then maybe slide again, and then I'll hand it over to our colleagues at the CIMAD iLab. So Mohammed.
Okay, good. Excellent. Thanks, Nishat. Good afternoon to you all. My name is Mohammed Akash. I'm the head of innovations at CIMAD Innovation Lab. As you said, we are part of one of the leading private universities in Somalia. We tackle a number of issues, including skill crisis, unemployment. We do have a number of services, including education program, fabric lab, active program for small and medium-sized enterprises. So that's who we are in a very brief. We are so very excited to partner with the Research Innovation Lab for this exercise in Mogadishu. We had the pleasure to co-participate with them training for data collectors for the go to field with the gadget very crucial data about the local manufacturers in Mogadishu, which we never had any report or publication from them. So for us, we are so much interested in finding out the scale and the number and the sectors of the local manufacturers who are based in Mogadishu, their challenges, their opportunities, and what we can do for them to support them so they can sustain and continue their work. And generally, Somalia is a very fragile country where we are now reconstructing all our infrastructures that will help recover our economy. And industrialization is one of those pillars that we need to focus more for our economy to recover. So, as per perception, we have the number of industries are very limited, but we don't know how much are they limited and what are their main challenges. So I look forward to the findings of this mapping, and I think it will inform us what we do in every daily work at our lab at our university. So thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks, Mohammed. So just as a bit of a methodology and a bit of a background in terms of what we actually did in Mogadishu and Hargeisa. So we had discussions with the Internet of Production Alliance and with Field Ready and with Humanitarian OpenStreetMaps. And we looked at bringing them and specifically some of their team from Uganda that had been doing the mapping there to come to Mogadishu and Hargeisa. And they came in November. we had built out the interest of these partners with World Vision, Oxfam, Somaliland Chamber of Commerce, and CIMAD University, CIMAD iLab, who would then be able to host us to help facilitate with the logistics, help us with access to the different factories, and to help find the data collectors. So we did a workshop to train the people on the standards to be able to then do a bit of a pilot. What we realized was something which is relatively new like this. We wanted to do kind of a small scale pilot as a proof of concept to then be able to come back, which what we're doing today, to showcase with a small amount of resources, this is what it could look like. And then to then use that as a conversation starter to see what else is possible. And so, yeah, so that was the starting point. So that was completed back in November, the training, and then we started to do the teams then worked on for the next couple of weeks to collect the data from these two cities, which then fed back into this global this global platform, and then was included in the larger data set from other countries. And so, yeah, so we were quite excited to be a part of that initiative. And so today we're hoping to be able to explore what is possible, to showcase what was done. And then, yeah, already to generate some conversation. I think there's a lot of opportunities, as was mentioned by Ahmed, to try and support local industries, to help strengthen them, to be able to identify opportunities for growth, and just for creating awareness and knowledge about what is locally possible instead of always being dependent on external suppliers. And so, yeah, so with that, let me hand it out. And just as a bit of a background for the Response Innovation Lab, we are a collaborative humanitarian innovation platform. And so for us, our role is not to be an incubator of new innovations, but to try and identify new and emerging initiatives, best practices, things that show promise, and try and see how those can be addressed to different humanitarian challenges that we come across. And in particular, what we saw and why we were excited about the opportunity for Somalia was because of seeing, with the COVID response, seeing that this could be an opportunity to help move from kind of a response to recovery to building the longer term resilience of the local ecosystem. And so with that, let me hand it back to Barbara and Max. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nishant. We'll open up for a quick Q&A session. So we'll do several Q&A throughout the presentation rather than waiting to keep everything at the end. But before we move to that, I just want to tell you about one more exciting thing that came from this initiative, which is that we were able to translate, get the first translation of the Open Nowhere data standard, and for that matter, any of the Internet of Production Alliance standards. And so here's a QR code, which then takes you to the standards platform on which all of the Internet of Production Alliance or Internet of Production standards are. There's also one for how you document a hardware design. And as you can quickly see in the screenshot here, it's been translated for the purpose of this project. And two other translations are on the way, but it was really this one that kickstarted the okay, we really need to be translating standards. Should we want this to be global, despite the fact that standards in manufacturing are understood in English? It was a lot more relevant and a lot more specific to be looking at what all these different terms meant for local manufacturers in a language that was operational at the time of the project. So I would like to open up. You are welcome to write in the chat. You're also welcome to not write anything. And if nothing happens in 20 seconds, we'll move on from there. But if anyone has a question or two for Nishant and the partners of this project, you are welcome, very welcome to open up your microphone or write something in the chat. Nishant, I can see a first question. Sure. It might be for you or for Oxfam. Anna's asking how you found the manufacturers to share their information.
Sure. So in Hargeisa, this was why it was critical to partner with the Somaliland Chamber of Commerce. And then in particular, they also brought in someone from the Industrial Association. And so they were critical in terms of, they actually accompanied a few of the data collectors to go to some of the factories together. So they are known entities. So for us, it was important. We didn't want to just have random people showing up to a factory wanting to collect data without any kind of backing or understanding. People might feel that it's espionage or corporate threats or anything like that. So we wanted to make sure that they were accompanied by a trusted entity. And so it was critical to go with the Chamber of Commerce and a member of the Industrial Association. And then also when it came to Simad University and in Mogadishu, Simad University is quite well known for their research. And so when the data collectors went around, they had a letter with them. And so then that gave them some reputation because people knew and recognized the university. And so they were happy to participate. Thanks.
Yaman is asking, how might we ensure that the database is kept alive and the data is kept up to date? I think either you might answer this, or Max, might you have some thoughts on how we'd answer this?
Yes, thank you for that question, Yaman. That's actually one of the main concerns, as Nishant had mentioned. Sort of making sure that the data is well maintained after it's collected is one of the key concerns that we want, and that's one of the. So what we're doing is building a platform which I'll be showing soon, and we're looking at actually incorporating ways to make sure that this that it's easy for people to be able to update the data, that if they find that there's any problems with the data as they're using it. So I think it is something that needs to be very much sort of community driven by the community of people who are using this data. And Barbara is also going to touch on another initiative that we're doing called the Data Awards, which is also in part addressing this this very important question as well.
Great.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Oh yeah, go ahead, Nishant.
As let's say in Somalia specifically, that was one of the things that we also wanted to test out. Right, this is still very much an early stage pilot, at least in this context. One of the things that we saw an opportunity with partnering with the Chamber of Commerce in Hargeisa in Somaliland was because they already have they register a lot of businesses and provide support. And they do that, they update that data on an annual basis. And so we saw that as an opportunity, if this did take off and have momentum, that as factories then are re-registered to be a part of the chamber on an annual basis, it would give an opportunity to update the data at a relatively low cost, easy way. So that was one thing that we wanted to test out, and we'll see how that progresses. So yeah, so that's why we were comparing a few different approaches and models.
Quite sure we didn't mention that this. I think we didn't mention this was this is very fresh. It's from last November, December, and so we'll give it a year and come back and tell you how efficient that was. Max was mentioning one other update I would like to give you from this past year before we look forward is that with the support of the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, we were able to launch the Open Nowhere Data Awards and have a first round of awards. So the data awards in total will give 10 what you might call rather small grants of $500 to $1,500, very much looking at supporting volunteer organizations and networks or students or academics hiring students to basically put us in touch with where the manufacturing locations are, where they are locally. And to make this concrete, I'll talk about those first two awardees. The first awardee is OpenStreetMap Uganda. That is an organization that is creating a vibrant community of mappers and GIS experts or enthusiasts in Uganda. They actually, some of them are the people that did the testing of the Open Nowhere data standards to start with. So I would say they're the biggest Open Nowhere experts out there. But they took, with this award, they're taking it Further, geographically speaking, they mapped more locations. They also mapped more sectors, because initially the mapping had been very much focused on PPE manufacturers or manufacturers with PPE capacity. This expanded the range of manufacturers that were mapped. But in addition to that, and in regard to the last question we had, they've also used this funding to go back to some of the initial location. There was a random selection of some of the previous data that they had collected in the year prior to the launch to verify how up to date that data was. So that's one example. The other type of possible use of awards is what you might call data wrangling. And this is very much going to be the focus of the team that David Castillo has put together. So he has hired students who are going to be looking at finding existing data sets, looking at chambers of commerce, looking at Google Maps, at repositories of informations, phone books, etc., and existing associations, and using those data sets and adjusting them to the Open Nowhere data standard so that they can also be featured on any tool that would be using data that is mapped to the standard. So this started off in March, and as you can see in this map, OpenStreetMap Uganda has finalized the data collection, and David Castillo's team is working on it as we speak. Now that is what has happened. The second part of this conversation is going to let us look at what actually happens to this data, because initially this is Excel spreadsheets or data in a server or a Kobo toolkit survey, and it's not actionable until it's accessible. And this is what Max is going to be telling us about. So I will hand the microphone over to you, Max.
Thank you, Barbara. So I'll just switch my screen to share my screen. And so as Nishant mentioned, this whole process started with, of course, designing and publishing the standard itself, which has, and again, I'd invite you to look at the standard site if you're interested in looking at sort of more details of what kind of data is being captured. And then there were surveys that were designed using a platform called ODK, which is an open source data kit for collecting data. And as Nishan mentioned, surveyors were trained to go and collect data using the standard. And let me just, there we go. And what we did is we worked very closely with Field Ready and Humanitarian OpenStreetMaps, as well as organizations that have been involved with that have already been mentioned in terms of the work that was done in Somalia and Somaliland, to go and send surveyors out and collect the data. And the next step was really just to sort of clean and prepare the data to make sure that it was consistent and that any errors were fixed. And what we're doing now is we're building both an interactive map to help people use the data and find locations. This is basically an early prototype of the map that we're building at the moment. And I just realized we'll switch back to the slides once I've finished showing this, so you can see the address of the map, but it's just map.internetofproduction.org. And you can see here that it's currently, you can sort of filter by the different countries that these surveys have already been carried out in. I'm going to show you the global map now. It's a very sort of raw interface, I guess you could call it, at the moment. But it really sort of showcases the amount of data that's there. So now you can see all of the locations that have been mapped and all of the facilities and machines that have been mapped using the Open Nowhere standard. And over here, you can see that this is a listing of all of the fields where the data was collected. So you can see that it's a very comprehensive list of data and list of fields. that are in there. And if I zoom in a little bit now, just to sort of show that this is, you know, the kinds of some ideas with how this is usable at the moment. And as I said, this is very much sort of an early prototype that we're looking to develop further. But if we look at one of the fields here, for example, the manufacturing process, if the user is familiar with SQL, then you can, and you're familiar with the fields, you can actually query the data. And let's say you want to find all welding facilities that have been mapped using this data. You'll see here that you can run these kinds of filters. And here it shows you that we have 529 in total. There are 3 that are in Mogadishu, for example, and in different parts of the map that we've mapped so far. So this is where we're at the moment with this. You can also, again, with people who want to use this data, you can download the data, the results of your query, you can download it as raw data in different formats. And what we're doing with this particular prototype is we're using an open source program called Dataset, which allows for people to download and run this whole system offline. So it's very much geared towards the use case of humanitarian aid organizations, for example, or anybody else where they're worried about wanting to access this data, but in places where there's very limited internet access. So you can not only download the data set, the data itself, but you can actually download this whole platform and run it on a laptop, essentially, so that you can actually be able to do this in those kinds of situations. The next steps for us really are to basically improve this interface to make it a lot more user-friendly, so you don't really need to understand the structure of the data and how to run SQL queries in order to be able to query the data. And to the question that we received earlier, also to make it very easy for people sort of to basically to have sort of crowdsourcing functionality for people to be able to suggest updates to the data. If you're a user of a particular facility or you're managing a particular facility and you notice that either the information is incorrect or more likely to be out of date because perhaps some certain facilities or certain machines have been added or removed from the facility. So that's the kind of functionality that we're looking to add to the platform in order to be one of the ways to address this very important issue of making sure that the data is kept up to date. We're also building an application programming interface, basically, that allows other applications and other platforms to query the data and use it in different ways. And to that end, I will switch. I'll hand over now to Kat, where she's going to be talking about one such use case where Field Ready and Needs List have worked together to use this data in order to be able to match needs with manufacturing facilities. So, Kat, if you'd like to, would you like us to? Barbara, I think if you go back to the slides, or Kat, I think you have your own slides. Is that right?
Kat, you're welcome to just take the microphone.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Hi, Max. Thank you very much. I'm going to hope that the tech gods are with us, and I'm going to see if I can share my screen. You guys can let me know when it's up. Ta-da! Ta-da is excellent. Ta-da is what I want to hear. Okay, so I'm Kat Sellers. I'm Global Program Manager for Field Ready's COVID-19 response, and I'm going to give you some actual tangible examples of where all of these tools have been put into practice to be useful in a crisis. So we've talked a bit about HOT, who are our third partner, but just to introduce Field Ready and Needs List. So Field Ready, we're a humanitarian NGO. We specialize in making items that are needed as close as possible to where they're needed in a crisis. So we currently work in Nepal, Uganda, Kenya, Bangladesh, Iraq, the Pacific, all over the place. So we've partnered with Needs List. Needs List is a global platform, and the purpose of Needs List is to demonstrate what is needed locally and then to have organizations meet those needs. So I'm going to talk a bit about how that's worked to benefit our project. The project itself was funded by Humanitarian Grand Challenges. It's a transition to scale program. The purpose is to innovate in humanitarian response. It came about at the beginning of the pandemic, and the idea was that we would get as much COVID personal protective equipment as possible to refugee health workers in our 4 countries. So that's Iraq, Bangladesh, Uganda, and Kenya. So in order to do that, we have to do 3 main things. First of all, we need to understand and map the demand for PPE in those target communities. Alongside that, we need to map the manufacturing capabilities able to meet those demands. And then we need to go about the business of actually making it. So the purpose of the program is to solve some problems. Well, I'm going to frame this around the challenges that this program was aimed to solve. So first of all, humanitarian supply chains tend to be really, really long. Something will happen, an organization will need something, and often what happens is they will ship that item in from a different country and then across that country to where it's needed. So here's an example from Kenya. Often if something's needed in Kakuma refugee camp, an organization will ship it in from China, it comes to Mombasa, it goes either by a plane or by a truck all the way across the country to the top corner to Kakuma, where it's distributed by the last mile partners. This is expensive, time-consuming, and also it denies the local population the ability to meet their own needs. So our project has this focus on local manufacture. Here are 3 images from the field in Kakuma. So on the left, we have a women's group that we train to make surprise soaps. Surprise soaps are a clear soap that has a toy inside that improves children's hand washing. The middle image is an organization called Don Bosco, who are a faith charity inside Kakuma refugee camp. They train the local community in welding, carpentry, and such. And we had them make some hand washing stations for use inside the camp. And then the image on the right is of a recycling project happening inside Kakuma. So members of the community collect plastic, they sort it, and then it becomes shredded. And we provided them with the mold to be able to make face shields, which were then used by local healthcare providers. So also good for the environment and circular economy. So the next challenge that we have is that even if organizations would love to buy stuff locally, often either they don't know where to, or they lack a confidence in that local manufacturing capability. So we really wanted to use the standard to map local manufacturers, so that at a glance, an agency that's part of the program can see who's doing what in their area. So this is a screenshot of the platform, the map, and this is our mapping that we were doing in Hargeisa. So you go to the area that you need, you can click on a pin, or you can search by type of machinery. And this is really helpful if you understand what it is, the process that you want. So say, for example, I want to have some school uniforms made. I can search for somebody with sewing machines in my vicinity, and I know that they can support me to make school uniforms. So we use the tools to map not just the location, the contact information, but also the manufacturing process, because we felt that would be helpful, not just for this project, but also in the future for organizations to kind of support the ecosystem. And then another challenge is procurement. When you're working in the aid sector, you're spending public money, so it's really important that you have open and transparent tendering process. What this often leads to, though, is a lot of bureaucracy, and it prevents smaller organizations from being able to participate. This platform allows you to have, in real time, people to post what they need, other people to post what they're offering, and to have those matched in the minute. Omar, your hand's raised. Would you like to interject? If not, I've only got a couple of slides left and we can pick up at the end. All right, I'll go to the end. Okay, so what's the output? So we've been running for 2 years. We've helped 65 partners, so that's local NGOs, get what they need. We've worked with 43 local manufacturers to actually make items. Many, many more than that have been mapped. We have made more than 440,000 items of PPE, and that's over 500,000 beneficiaries that we've supported. Also, for us organizations, Field Ready was able to raise an extra £100,000 through FCDO to make more PPE. And Needs List were just awarded $1 million Google grant to make their platform free for the next year, and also to undertake a similar piece of work in Ukraine. So success all round. All right, that's all from me. I'm going to hand back over to you guys. Thank you very much.
The microphone?
Yes, thanks. Will you be resharing the presentation, or would you like me to?
I'm happy to.
Okay, yes, if you could, that'd be great. Thanks. Yes, thanks, Kat, for that example of how, again, how Needs List and Field Ready have used the data in this really interesting way. And there was I just wanted to make sure there was a hand raised. I just want to make sure that there wasn't a question that somebody had about Kat's presentation that was missed. Okay, so what we're going to move on to next is, if you can move the slide, please, a couple of slides forward, Barbara. There we go. So we're going to do a what's known as a chat storm in here in Zoom, and a chat storm, basically, it's what I'll do is I'll invite you to think about the answer to this question of what would you like to have manufactured locally, but don't put the answer in the chat yet. I'll give you sort of a minute just to think about that, and then I'll do a countdown. And at the end of the countdown, if you can all just sort of prepare your answer and then just hit enter at the same time, that way we'll just get everybody's answer in one go, which would then lead us into the next part, which is going into some breakout rooms to have a bit of a brainstorm about the different ways that you could see this kind of data being used. And again, this is whether, very, very open question, whether it's something that you'd want for your home, or whether it's something that you think, a spare part for your vehicle, or something that's more related to your work or your business. And hopefully with the answers, we'll be able to prompt the conversation about the different kinds of use cases and the different kinds of ways that you can see this kind of data being used. So yes, if you can prepare your answers, and I'll just do a countdown, and when I hit from 3 to 1 on 1, just hit enter and we'll take it from there. So 3, 2, 1, submit your answers. Cool. So we have a few answers coming in. And so with those prompts and with some of those answers, so some of those ideas, we're going to put you into breakout rooms and share this link here to a system known as a Jamboard. And there are different sections of the Jamboard which I'll just share in the chat right now. There are different sections of the Jamboard. Each one is numbered with different breakout room numbers. So if you could just find the Jamboard that matches your breakout room, and have a conversation with your colleagues in the breakout room, and just put down some ideas specifically about, prompted by these answers, or anything else you can think of about how you can see this kind of data being used, different kinds of use cases. So Barbara, are you ready to start the breakout rooms?
Yeah, you've all received an invitation. Thank you very much for your thoughts, everybody. It's been really wonderful looking at what you were all doing. Max, do you want to wrap up this part of the discussion, and we'll move on to looking forward?
Yes, just seconding what Barbara just said. Thank you, everybody. I'm sort of looking through the different boards, and it's really some very interesting discussions to be started with some of these ideas. So looking forward to connecting with you sort of past this to discuss some of these ideas further. And yeah, and I think, for the breakout room I was in, I think one of the interesting things was the conversation about sort of the whole supply chain as well. And I think sort of how this is really the first step in a much longer chain of elements that we are looking to put together in terms of helping facilitate the idea of creating an internet of production and enabling sort of localized and distributed manufacturing. So I think, yeah, this is, and then looking at the other ones, it's very much, I think some of these ideas are really interesting as well in terms of looking at different industries like fisheries and food, and sort of looking at what the scope of production is in that context is also something that we're very much looking forward to exploring.
Thank you, Max. Can somebody confirm that you can see the screen share I'm doing?
We can see Breakout Room 2.
Super, great. Then we have actually very little left. I know that people are starting to trickle out because the meeting is a little bit more than an hour, but I will say that we actually only have 5 to 10 minutes left. We were just playing it safe when we said an hour and a half. So I encourage you to stay for this final part where we will talk about what you can do now that you've heard about all of this, and beyond the support that you've given us by sharing your brain power in the previous exercise. There are 3 ways in which you can support or be part of the Open Nowhere community. The first very simple way is to scan this QR code, which will enable you to receive our newsletter, to sign up to our newsletter. You can also do that on our website, internetofproduction.org. And thanks to this newsletter, you will receive the announcement of when the next round of the Open Nowhere Data Awards will be opened. And it is very probably going to be in August. It might be a little bit before that. So I encourage you to sign up to the newsletter so that you know exactly when it happens. The sign up form is very simple, and we highly encourage people to also nominate others. If you know of an interesting group of people, organization, a researcher that you think would be great to do mapping of local manufacturing or research into data sets that already exist, you can nominate them. One of the 2 previous awardees was actually someone who was nominated and didn't apply themselves. The second thing you can do, or will be able to do very soon, it is to tell us yourself where machines are. The Internet of Production Alliance team is working on a self-reporting tool, a tool that will enable you to directly enter the data of locations of manufacturers or tools, so that they can appear on the map that we just saw. And if they are on the map that we just saw, it opens up a whole new world of other platforms being able to tap into this data, or people accessing this and leveraging it to create things like the needs list platform that we saw. The third way that you can join or support us is quite hands-on. It is to join the Open Nowhere working group. The way the Internet of Production Alliance functions is that we are a large group of individuals representing various organizations, and we work together in working groups that actually develop standards or tools. And the Open Nowhere working group specifically is looking at supporting the work that I just described. And one of the things that they will be working on is reaching out to institutions and organizations who have relevant data sets and building partnerships with them. We are looking to bring into the working group, especially people who might be more connected to lower tech manufacturing capabilities, artisan associations, researchers who don't necessarily have to do with 3D printers and high-end technology. The working group is also working on developing guides for how to use the Open Nowhere data standard. And anybody who joins the working group can shape what it is that it focuses on. So there's also everything that, all the ideas that you might have that I might not guess can be brought into this working group. They meet once a month. It is also possible to listen in and share thoughts once. And the way that we keep each other posted on this is currently through a Slack channel, but also a public forum has just been launched. So don't hesitate to contact us at info@opennowhere.org to hear more about that and to let us know if you're interested in any of this, or if you would like to suggest people who would be relevant for this. The last thing I want to mention is that the Internet of Production has just joined something called the MAKE Consortium, which is funded by the European Commission to support makerspace collaboration between Europe and Africa and within Europe and between the two continents. Within this project, we will be mapping at least 500 makerspaces or innovation hubs. And if you are within one such space, please do feel free to reach out to us directly. If you think that that there are networks that we should really remember to contact, I would also very much welcome an email sent there, which would arrive directly in my inbox. So you know who you're speaking to when you're writing to info@opennowhere.org. And with that, I would like to leave the floor open for a couple of minutes. If you want to ask questions or share thoughts, I know that some of you need to drop off, and thank you very much for joining for this much time. And I will just leave this slide up so that you are able to have some contact information, even if you don't have anything you would like to share. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions directly. The panelists will be here to answer any questions for a couple of minutes more. And one of the things could be that I now see that one of the panelists that was supposed to speak at the beginning and wasn't working is here. Would you like to take the microphone and speak? I believe it's Ahmed.
Excuse me, it's me?
But we do have someone from the government here. So Ibrahim,
Wonderful.
Federal government. So I can hand it over to him. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Nashad, for the invitation to this program. Really appreciate. My name is Ibrahim Abdullah from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. As you all know, Somalia is a republic country focused on the economic development and more creation jobs. And I believe local industry is very important when it comes to the economic development and employability. And Somalia is depending on the more import from the international market. So we need at least to do more production sector to support the local manufacturing. And I believe this that you are doing now is more important when it comes to the policy making. And the government is preparing now a lot of policy, including the SME policy, industrial policy, and trade policy. And I hope this data will help us a lot from the information you are getting from the local manufacturing. And I appreciate it, and I hope we will meet another time in the show and chat. And thank you guys, all of the team. You are doing a great job, and we will work together. Thank you.
This is a great partnership for sustainability of this kind of project. I'm very proud that we were able to have some thoughts coming from you. Nishant, do you want to add a little bit more on that?
Yes, thank you. No, just thank you, everyone. I know this is still a very early stage prototype, but I think what for me is a success is to see that with relatively small amount of resources, we were able to pull together this kind of network of like-minded people and organizations who saw the value of something like this, that we were able to do this kind of at low resources and to be able to pull something as an initial kind of pilot. Your feedback, of course, today, but also following this, you have our contact information, will be very helpful as we look to scale this up and then hopefully to be able to meet the different needs of the various stakeholders in this group. So yeah, your ongoing kind of participation in this process is very helpful so that we know that whatever that we are producing is actually useful for you. So it's very critical for us to have your ongoing participation. So thank you very much for your interest in this, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you. I think Barbara has shared a few ways that you guys can tangibly do that. And so, yeah, thank you very much. Very appreciative.
I will leave another minute to know if anybody has any questions. And if not, I will very respectfully thank you all for joining and for giving us so many ideas. I hope you've been excited by some of what you've heard. And I repeat, don't hesitate to reach out to us.